A very warm welcome to everybody who's joining us today. Welcome to Catalyst ERP's webinar on Cask to Commerce, Elevate Your Beverage Operations with Bottle ERP. My name is Sam Bear. I am the ERP Sales Manager, Distillery Specialist. Imad, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Imad Malik, Director of ERP Products at Catalyst ERP. I deal with the development and implementation of Bottle ERP itself.
Thank you. So here's a rough agenda of what we'll be going through today. So we're starting off with an introduction, and then we'll be going through to the demonstration where we'll be covering component management, recipe and BOM management, so bill of materials, purchasing and material resource planning, MRP, and then we'll be wrapping up with some Q&A. So why NetSuite? So NetSuite is a cloud-based solution with 40,000 customers globally. It's upgraded twice a year, so you are never version locked, unlike some other systems out there on the market. Bottle ERP is built within the NetSuite platform and therefore naturally upgrades in parallel. NetSuite at its core is a finance system. However, you can see in the wheel that you get all of the other functionalities that come with it out of the box. So this is your full end-to-end platform from lead through to cash, so your CRM, manufacturing, production, finance, under one platform, which forms the basis of what we have built with Bottle ERP. So what is Bottle ERP? Bottle ERP is an industry-specific ERP management tool. So in NetSuite out of the box, as previously alluded to, you get your financials, inventory management, your CRM, and your production. However, with Bottle ERP, you get all of the things that you can see here on the screen. So your cask management, LPA tracking, duty management, and your HMRC integration, and our new product, WMS Go. So when we say grain to glass, we quite literally mean end-to-end grain to glass. So this is your component management through to your spirit production, cask management, sample tracking, your bottling, your warehouse management, your LPA and duty tracking, and your HMRC reporting and integration. So this means that from your sales through to your warehouse team, your production, supply chain ops directors, everyone has live and up-to-date information on their own dashboards. And these dashboards are all pertinent to the roles that are assigned to the specific departments with all of the data linked. So this allows for more dynamic decisions to be made as the decision-making process is expedited drastically because everyone is singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. So from what we've seen, this eliminates spreadsheets and production offices and reduces the requirements to take on further headcount due to the real-time information flow being optimized. So ask yourselves, where is the true cost of growth? Is this in people or is it in systems? Imad, over to you.
Can everyone see my screen? Can you see that, Sam?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Thank you. So as Sam said, we're going to concentrate on this first webinar around the purchasing side, around components, around MRP, and how some of the planning elements work together as well. To start off, we're just going to start with just what we're looking at first. So as Sam mentioned, everything is connected in the same system for manufacturing, purchasing, sales, etc. And each role that you're using has a dashboard that is pertinent to what you're doing in the business itself. So today we're going to take a look at our procurement dashboard that I've made as an example. So on here, we've got key reminders around capacity warnings, stock levels. We're able to track our vendor performance on how many late deliveries are we having, who are they from, so I can click through to any of these reports. How, on average, how late are our deliveries? How often are we doing vendor returns? What is the value of our stock, etc. And then there's more detailed versions of these reports around open purchase orders, where I can see this information, make changes if I want to straight from my dashboard, or jump straight into that record and go and find more information if I need to. And each one of these dashboards are completely configurable. I can add new reminders if I need to. I can change my metrics. I can add new personalizations and personalize my dashboard to make it more personal to what I want to do in general. But the idea is, because you're all working in one system, you're always seeing the latest information to make sure you're getting the most real-time, up-to-date, data-driven decisions. So that's just our dashboard. And I said this is an example of one that we have created for the procurement role. Finance would have one, sales, operations, logistics, etc. would all have one as well. So that's an overview of a dashboard. The thing that we're going to look at first is around our component management, our stock management, our item management, and how that might work in NetSuite itself. And that'll lead us into the bill of material, the recipe management, how that works. So when we're talking about our items, we're talking about SKUs, we're talking about products that you make, products that you buy. So in this case, I've got an example of an item that we make, so liquid that we make called Whiskey 99, where we have the availability to put a categorization, define a description. We can categorize it by flavor, size, alcohol type, and put an estimated ABV. And these are examples of some of the metrics that you can track. You can have other classification categorizations as needed. But because we're not just dealing with the static item information, we're dealing with purchasing, sales, manufacturing information as well. There's a lot more information we can see from here. So going down to my purchasing and inventory tab, I can see my total stock value and my average cost of the product as well. And because this is a batch product, if I went through the process, we could see the cost per cask, cost per bottling run. We can track all that straight through. And because everything is linked throughout the entire process from your purchase order to the final bottle to the cask itself, you can do a trace from the top to the bottom, so trace from the bottle to see what grain went into it and the grain back to the bottle as well, because everyone's using the same system and you're always getting the latest information available to you. And scrolling down even further, I can see my stock levels at a high level against each of my locations, because NetSuite can handle multiple locations, as well as multiple subsidiaries, as well as multiple currencies as well. And similarly, on the sales side, you can see some of that pricing information as well. But today, as I mentioned, we're going to focus just on the purchasing side. So that's my example liquid item. Moving over to a different item that I've created, a bottled version of that item. So I've now bottled it, it's aged as much as I needed to. I've now bottled it. This one's slightly different. This time we're using units of measure to define how do we sell this? Do we sell it in cases? Do we sell it eaches? Do we sell it in bundles? How are we selling this? We've got barcodes that the system generates for you, our unique barcodes that can then be scanned by our handheld solution. So as Sam was mentioning around our warehouse management, we have a WMS application that comes along with Bottle ERP that allows you to see real-time information as the distillers are completing spirit productions, milling, mashing runs as they need to. That information is coming straight back into NetSuite in real time, so both sides are getting that up-to-date, data-driven decision as needed. And similarly, we're able to classify these products, put our estimated ABV, see our pricing, see our total value of stock, and go down to the individual location as well. And a lot of these figures are clickable, and I can click into these and see the additional reports off the back of them. And that's just a very high level overview of our item records. Two examples, one's a liquid, one's a bottled product. Very similarly, our components, are different items that we create in the system, where we might put minimum stock levels, reorder points, lead times and preferred vendors, all this information that will allow us to not just handle our stock levels, but plan better and allow us to track that as part of the production. And when we talk about MRP, the material resource planning element, near the end of this session, see how all that feeds into each other and then gives you an overview of the entire system and the business and lets you deal with any issues without having to hunt for those issues. It brings them forward to you instead. So as I said, that's our item record. Because NetSuite, you're not only, as I mentioned, just managing your stock, you've got your manufacturing section as well. We need to manage that bill of material, that recipe itself. How are you making these products? Be it a whiskey item, be it a gin item, be it any sort of product that you're making, how are you managing that in the system? So under our manufacturing tab, we can see our bill of material that I've created and revision as well. NetSuite has full bill of material and revision management. You can have multiple revisions for different types of things that you're doing, where you can put certain dates on, you can track efficiency of each individual bill of material revision and see how they progress. If we open up one of our revisions that I've created as an example, what we'll be able to see is that we can track per each individual item that we're going to be consuming and how much we're going to be consuming. So as I said, I've got a simple bill of material with 3 items on: well water, yeast, and grain. And each one of these items is an item record in its own right. It's a stocked item that we are tracking. It has its own information. It might have a purchase order vendor, it might have a lead time. There's various bits of information that we're tracking. But on this case, we're also tracking the quantity to produce a litre of pure alcohol based on our estimated ABV. What do we think it'll take to make a litre of pure alcohol? And then what does the system think that means in bulk? terms. That then allows us to plan in terms of stock as an anticipation of what the consumption will be. But then when we get to our manufacturing side, we're able to compare our expected, our recipe, to our actual and see what's actually happened, and then start tracking grain usage and start tracking the actuals versus expected and the utilization of various elements. If I wanted to take this further and move away from a simple BOM and I wanted to track overheads, labor, utilities, etc., I can add them as part of this process, and then I can start tracking them. All that will then get rolled up and give us that financial cost of to make this product itself. NetSuite is a finance system at its heart. Every element has a financial impact that you're doing. So all these things that you're doing to run your business as normal, to do your manufacturing, to do your purchasing, they will all roll up and give you that final cost to produce that product, cost to produce that cask, cost to produce that bottle, and then the revenue, the offset of it. So as I mentioned, that's just our high-level overview of our item records. A couple of examples that we've had a look at. We have units to measure. We generate barcodes. Along with that, using our handheld solution, we always encourage the actual labels to be generated, and we can generate those from the system itself. And then we have the bill of material and the recipe management that allows you to control what recipes you're doing, what components you're going to be consuming, and against each one of those components, just like I have against these top-level items, I can track my lead times, I can track how long certain products take to come in, what my purchase order rate is, what my vendor is, and how do I want to plan for it as well. And that leads into my purchasing side, and how do we deal with the purchasing side of it? Well, the first stage of any sort of purchasing side is the vendor. So who is the vendor? How are we dealing with them? And what sort of information have we got against them? Just like you have your information for your item, you have your information for your vendor, where you can categorize it. If it's one company or multiple, NetSuite's multi-subsidiary, so you could have multiple companies running on your one NetSuite account in general. But from a Bottle ERP point of view, you can categorize these as well, and we can look at other information against this. So any credit limits, any terms, how do we deal with them from a currency point of view, one currency or multiple, and what are our balances as well. That just gives you that flexibility to track the key information against them, as well as maybe tracking the contacts. Who do you deal with there? How are you dealing with them there? Who's going to get the purchase order? Who's going to be sending you the bill, etc. And that leads us to our purchase order. So whenever you're looking at records in general in NetSuite, as we've looked at a couple now, the main information at the top, and then you have the more detailed information at the tabs at the bottom. So in the purchase order case, we've got our vendor at the top that I've selected. We've got the subsidiary that we're working with. So our subsidiary, what currency we're working with, depending on the ones that are set up against the vendor. And in my demo account, we've got a couple of extra fields around receiving by. So when do we expect this to be received in? But also where are we expecting to be received in? Which one of our locations that we've got do we expect this to be received in? And because we're tracking the receive by, going back to my dashboard right at the start, we can start tracking our actual vendor performance against each purchase order, against each item, to see how they're doing, to see are they meeting their lead times, are they meeting the receive by times, or are they running late? And as you saw on my dashboard at the start, we can track that automatically without you having to do anything. Just by putting the receive by date in, the system will calculate the average days late, which vendor's doing it, what is their score, what risk factor do they have, gives you that full connectivity without you having to put in the information multiple times into the system. But let's just take this to the next stage. So I've got my purchase order, I've got my vendor, and I've got my subsidiary that I've selected. The first bit is selecting your item. Depending on what you're doing, I could say I'm going to be buying some grain. So I select my grain item. That's then going to bring in the information I've got that against it. If I had a description, it'd pull that through, but it's brought through the quantity. I can change that to what quantity I want. If I've got the rate against the item, which I do in this case, it's brought that through. And if I've got any sort of quantity price breaks, I potentially could bring that through as well. I can keep it quite simple and leave it as a single line for grain, which gives me my total, gives me my tax, etc. I can then send that straight through because I can generate my purchase order acknowledgement, my purchase order itself from the system and send that to the vendor from the system, because NetSuite can track the communication as well. Or I can change the item and instead I don't want to buy a component. I maybe want to buy a cask because I want to produce some whiskey itself and I need some casks. So I can also buy some casks as well. So if I select hogshead, so if I just put in hogs, and then select my hogshead cask. Again, the rates automatically come through, and I want to buy 10 of them in this case. But because it's a hogshead cask, it's denoted as hogshead. And then I can have the ability to put in additional information, such as the wood type. What type of wood are we receiving against our cask? What's the cask code that's going against them as well? So is it a second fill, third fill, first fill? What is it? And just like before, my expected receipt date. Depending on the type of item you're receiving, depending on the type of product you're trying to buy, will depend on the information that you can put in against it. So my two examples, I can put in grain, I can put in hogshead casks, for instance, and I can choose the wood type. But I could also buy a filled cask where I'm defining this by LPA and defining how much LPA, what is the expected ABV of that product. And then also what sort of vessels are coming in. Am I expecting a tanker potentially because I bought a tanker from somebody, and then that tanker is then going to be filled into various casks that I bought. It very much depends how I want it to work. But regardless, you end up with your purchase order. Get a unique number for your purchase order if you want any sort of approvals off the back of it for budgetary reasons or for limit reasons, whatever it might be. Approvals can be added to your purchase order as well to make sure there is sign-off control over this process and people aren't ordering things that aren't signed off and aren't in the budget itself. But once you're happy, you can then go through the receipt process and receive in these items. In this case, if I go to receive, I can then go through and receive in my purchase order for my 10 hogshead casks. And this is a much simpler version of doing it, where I can just confirm that I've got my 10 casks and then I can go from there. But once I'm happy with that, I can then go through to the bill. Because all this information is getting pulled into the same system, you're always seeing the latest. So I can confirm on my receipt that I'm receiving 10 casks, and I can do this through NetSuite itself as I'm doing today, or as I mentioned, you can do this through our WMS app that allows you to do it on a handheld device, be it an Android device, be it an Apple device. It's device agnostic, so it works on any sort of application that you need. It allows you to see the real-time information in the system and push information back as well, without you having to load into an app, open up a laptop, etc. It's available on your phone, tablets, on scanners as needed. But once you confirm that you are happy to receive this, the system will then go away and generate the information it needs. You've confirmed that you've got your 10 hogshead casks. You're then able to go back to your purchase order and track your variances. Okay, I ordered 6 tons of grain. I've actually got 6.5 tons of grain. I bought 10 casks, 9 of them came in and 1 was damaged. I can start tracking those metrics against the various different amounts in the system itself. I can do this on the purchase order, or I can do this at a high level against the vendor, depending on how I want to see the information itself. So the system gives me that flexibility to see that information without having to delve into it, without having to connect different data sources. It's all in one system itself. So I've gone over the purchasing side, a couple of examples on our purchase orders itself. If we go back to our purchase order, we can see the system's now changed to pending billing because we've received it all. We can track the actual receipt against the quantity that was ordered. We can also track how much has been billed so far. And from a finance point of view, I can now bill this when the invoice comes in, or I can consolidate multiple purchase orders and bill them all together because I've got a single consolidated invoice from the vendor in question, however it might be. But I'm able to, from a finance point of view, also see the original purchase order, also see my receipt as well, because it's all linked. And that allows me to do a 3-year match against them to make sure that the quantity, the rate, the exchange rate, whatever it might be, matches on my purchase order to my receipt, to my bill, to make sure that we're marrying up that the invoice from the vendor is correct. And if there is a variance, a price variance, a quantity variance from the bill compared to the receipt, for instance, how do I want to deal with it? The system empowers you with all that information, allowing you to use all that to get the most out of it. So that's our purchase order. And that's a general overview of our purchase order. And that's if I wanted to create it manually. But the last bit on that I'm going to show you, the main bit of this is the MRP, the Material Resource Requirements Planning Engine. That uses all the information we've gone through, the item records, the recipes, the bill of materials, the vendor setup, the purchase prices, the lead times, etc. And it uses all that information. It allows you to see a view of the system to gauge if there is issues, where the issues are, and what you should be doing about them. But that all starts with filling those item records up, putting the lead times in, putting some vendors in, etc. But from the other side, the demand side, You have various different ways of doing it. You could just look at actual orders potentially, actual sales orders in the system or coming up, future orders, for instance, and that determines your demand. Or you could put a capacity and say, I'm going to produce up to a certain capacity. Or you can forecast for demand itself. Depending on which way you want to do, the system's able to carry it all on. And that one of the ways to do it is using an item demand plan. So I've got an example here for my bottled whiskey 99 that I've created, where I've manually created a plan per month for 2025, where I said I anticipate I'm going to need 5,000 bottles a month. For whatever reason, I'm going to need 5,000 a month. I've also used the system to generate a suggestion for me. So there's various different ways where I can get the system to generate a demand plan for me instead. And it can use the historical information in your system to determine, okay, based on what's happened last time, based on a uplift, based on various different parameters, what's going to happen. And in this case, I've used linear regression, but going to that overview screen, I've got various different ways of doing it, moving average as well, sales forecast, seasonal average, and abilities to feed into these elements to choose how far back I want to look, to choose how far forward I want to look. And then the system is going to suggest a value. And I always have the ability to accept that or to override it with my own value, depending on which one I want to do. In this case, I've overridden it just to keep it simple, but you have the ability to do both, as I mentioned. And it takes into account that units of measure as well that I've set up. So I've said whenever I'm producing, I'm actually producing per bottle. So when I want to produce something, I'm looking at producing 5,000 bottles. But I could just say, I want to plan as I sell. So I want to plan in cases of 6 in this example. But just to keep it simple, as I mentioned, I'm making it in eaches to go from there. That then leads into the rest of the information I've put in, my item record, my vendor record, and my lead times. I then define how do I want this to work. As I mentioned, you have multiple options how you want this to work. Per location, I can decide what I want to see. So in my example, I've set it up for where I produce my goods. So the distillation plant, that with demand we're going to look at is sales orders and demand plans. I could just look at sales orders, I could just look at demand plans, but I choose to look at both. So I can see actual orders compared to my actual demand. I also have the ability to determine if I want to consume my forecast. So my demand that I've put in for 5,000, if I get an order for 4,000, let's say, or multiple orders like total 4,000, do I want my total demand to still be 5,000, or should it add the 5,000 from my demand plan and add the 4,000 from my sales orders and give me a total of 9,000? Well, in this case, I've got additive. I've not got a cumulative, I've got additive on this. So I have the option to choose how I want this to work. And the system's quite flexible on that. And you can go a step further if you want to. You can also define transitions, distribution networks where things are linked together. So I've got a very simple example here where I might put in some demand and it's the visitor centre. So I've got a visitor centre as well in Manchester, and that demand comes through a transfer because my distillation plant is what produces it. And it takes 1 day to move between the 2 locations. So if I've got any sort of demand, any sales, any demand forecast that I've put in there, the shop there, for instance, might put their own forecast in for how many bottles they need per week, per month, etc. Because I have demand plan on a monthly basis. But there's no reason why, if I wanted to put a forecast in for my visitor centre itself, I could put that in on a daily, a weekly, or a monthly basis and plan that separately and then get the system to roll them up together. So when it's looking at the total demand, you're not just seeing your main demand for your wholesale, for instance, you're seeing your direct business as well, your visitor centres or any other locations you've got or set up or sources. And that's just to give you an example of what's available. So I've got my supply plan definition where I'm defining how do I want my demand plan to work, how do I want my demand to work, and then I've got my supply plan groups, which defines any distribution I've got between different locations. So how does the system link them together? So if I'm trying to get a full view of the entire picture and everything, how does it all link together? And that gives me my base. Everything I've pretty much shown you is a one-time setup. Once you've set it up, then you can use the screen. The information required is very minimal. You just need to put your items in and your recipes as a starting point, and then you go from there. You use the system. You can add more parameters. You can add lead times into it, or you can get the system to start learning from it. You can put demand plans in. You can look at actual orders. The system has a lot of flexibility depending on what you're trying to do. But you can start simple and you can build on it. But at the end of the day, Once I've done all that, I want to actually see the result. What do I get from the system when it's done all that for me? Well, you get this planning workbench. So the idea of the planning workbench is to give you an overall view of everything that's going on for those items that you said you want to deal with MRP, so material resource planning. So the screen itself is split into multiple different sections. On the left, you have a couple of ways to filter by location, by item, by group of item. At the top, you have other filters around what do you want to look at. Do you want to look at actions that you need to do, exceptions? Do you want to look at certain supply types, so purchase orders, transfer orders? Or do you want to see where your demand is coming from? Safety stock, transfers, other forecasts, whatever it might be. But at the bottom, you get your list of products that you've decided that you want to plan against this. So if I have a look down and have a look at my whiskey 99 bottled, I could also filter this if I wanted to and just get it to show up to make it much simpler. I can see against this item, I've got my item, which I can break open and have a look at the actual bill of material if I wanted to. And I can see the individual units and information against it, the stock on hand, the on order, any late demand, etc. I can also open up a plan view of this product and change it to just match my plan that I put in on a monthly basis in this case. At the top, I can see my forecast for 5,000 for each month. I haven't got any sales orders in there, so currently it's not putting that on. I can also see it's unconsumed forecast because I haven't created anything for it, and it's not combination of my sales and my forecast itself, as well as seeing other transactions around transfer orders, giving me a total demand for this product overall in my entire business. What is my total demand currently? And as I mentioned, this could be for multiple locations, consolidated into one, depending on how you set up your network. And the next section is we're talking about, okay, production. Because this is a product that we produce, have we got anything in that we've already said we're going to produce? Are we planning any more to be produced? Okay, no. And off the back of that, take my requirements at the top, take away what I'm currently looking at, give me my total gross requirements. But then go a step further. Am I purchasing this in? Because there might be some elements you can produce yourself, some that you can purchase. Or is there any transfers that can bring this stock into where I'm trying to build it? Or have I even got any safety stock level? Is there a minimum stock level I want to keep with this product, no matter what my demand is in the system? Well, yes, I do. I have a minimum requirement of 500. And that gives me right at the bottom the full view. If I did nothing, based on my current stock levels, based on my past due, because I am past on some things, what is my stock level going to look like if I did nothing right now? Well, by the time I get to April, I'm going to run out of stock. So I need to do something about it. Well, if I do something about it and do what the system suggests, by the time I get to April, I'm going to have 650 in stock. And actually, if I keep to what it's telling me to do, I'll continue to have 658 on stock. And that's based on my current forecast. I can chop and change that forecast on a weekly, daily, monthly view, reforecast as things change. There's nothing stopping you to say that is set in stone, that can't change. That can change, you rerun the process, and then you get your updated view. At the end of it, we get, well, what's the system suggesting we produce? The different orders that it's suggesting we produce to match that demand. And I can see this in a grid view, as I mentioned, or I can actually get a graph view where it's a bit more clear that actually, if I don't do something by April, my stock levels are massively getting reduced. So I need to do something by April. And if I do, by the time I get to April, I'll have that safety stock level. I'll make sure I have enough stock. And I can see my safety stock at the top. And that's just seeing it from high level. If I want to interrogate this more, where is my demand coming from? Where is my supply coming from? What is the system actually suggesting me to do? Well, that's quite simple. I can go straight to my demand option for this item, and it's broken it down going, well, I've got safety stock of 500, so that needs to be set as a minimum. But I've also got my demand plans that have been created for 5,000 for each month. What's that's actually done in the system in terms of production? What is the system going to be doing? So we use a system called pegging to allow us to see the cause and effect. So at top level, for May, for instance, I put my 5,000 demand in. It could be a demand plan, it could be multiple demand plan, it could be a sales order, it could be a mix. But what has that caused? Well, I can open that up and I can see, well, that's caused a lot of work orders to be produced, a lot of production orders to be produced over a certain duration for different amounts, for different values that have been planned. But what have those individual work orders caused? Well, okay, I've got stock levels of most of the things I'm looking at, but actually I haven't got stock for this label that I need to go on there. So I need to do something about that. So it gives you a breakdown of what demand is, and what is that demand causing. And I can do that from the supply side, as I said, instead. So let's go take a look at the UK labels that I know is a potential problem because it's told me I need a purchase order when I look at demand. So if I go to the supply side for just that item itself, I can see, okay, I've got some purchase orders suggesting, I can click on any of these as I can with the demand side, and I can see where this is going. So not only are these feeding my Whiskey 99 bottles, but they're also feeding my elderflower gin in this case. And again, there's no reason why I can't dig into this deeper and go, okay, where is the demand coming from? Do I agree with the system? Well, there's demand plans in the system for that, or there might be orders in the system, or it might be something else that's causing it. Because all departments are working in one system, you're seeing that full view of your entire business. You're seeing that full view of the purchasing, the sales, the manufacturing teams all working together. Any logistical delays, any manufacturing delays are all affecting each other, and you can see what that means in terms of your supply. So there's no need to whiteboard anything, to have Excel to run any of this. It can all be done in the system, but it takes it a step further. From there, I could, if I just go back to that actually, I could decide, actually, I agree with you. I'm going to release these orders. I'm going to release these purchase orders that I suggested. And it could be for other things as well. It doesn't have to be purchase orders. It could also be work orders. So if I go to my supplier in total, not just against that item, I can look at my work orders as well. So I can release my work orders from here as well. Or actually, I can see if there's any problems. So if I go back to my overview screen, my summary screen, well, I can see against one of my components, it's highlighting there's an action and there's an exception to be dealt with. Right? And these match to the parameters at the top, the filters that are at the top. And I can see I'm already late on demand, an example of this product. So let's just click into the exception. Right, so it's telling me that I've got insufficient time for this purchase order. If I wanted this, I should have ordered this 10 days ago. So I need to do something about this. Similarly, actually, this is the action that now it says I need to deal with it. It's telling me to order this now before it gets too late. So go straight through to this transaction, make the purchase order, talk to your vendor, try to get it sorted quickly. So not only is it giving you that information to allow you to see where your supply is coming from, where your demand's going and coming from, but also how do they link to each other, and if there are exceptions, there are actions that need off the back of them, it highlights them to you so you can deal with them and you can ensure that you're getting the latest information from the system itself. From there, we can take it and go further. So we've now said that we want to generate our purchase orders, we want to generate work orders. As people use the system, generate those purchase orders, generate the actual work orders, do the productions, receiving the purchase orders. Some get received late, some get received early, etc. All that has an effect on the MRP engine. Every change has an effect. If production is late for whatever reason, that has a knock-on effect to the next production not having enough time. If the purchase order is late for whatever reason, well, that means that production can't start because that's now late, which then has another knock-on effect. Everything is linked to each other. But on this screen itself, because we've released them, we now have the ability to just make sure we're happy with that release before we create the final work orders and create the final purchase orders. So next we have two different screens. We have the order item screen that gives you an overview of those released purchase orders, where we can finalize them. We can see the dates that it's suggesting that we ordered them from, the date that we need to be receiving them in to keep to the plan. So I can see the two for my UK labels. I can scroll across and I can see the vendor, the currency they're working in, the quantity it's suggesting, and then a new rate as well. And I can have final say on this and go, actually, I don't want 556, I want 600, because I know a bit of local knowledge, 600 is going to be better. Or I've talked to the vendor on the phone and they're telling me to order all this now. And the system's also going to consolidate these orders. If I suggested that actually I wanted to release these two orders at the same time, it's going to consolidate those orders into a single purchase order to make sure I'm getting the most efficient way as well as possible. And similarly, on the production side, I have the mass create work order screen, which gives me the same sort of information for the actual production orders. Release these production orders, change the quantities, have the final say over what needs to happen, because the system will suggest based on what's going on, but you as the user will have the latest and greatest information of what's actually happening and have final say to make sure you're happy with everything. And as I mentioned, that then leads into making sure that from the purchasing side, when you've created the item, all the way to the manufacturing side, everything is linked, but the MRP engine sees it all and uses all that information to make sure you're staying on top of the plan, You're ensuring things aren't late, and if things are late, it will try and suggest actions to you to ensure you can deal with that. That pretty much concludes everything I was going to go through today. Just going back to my dashboard, as I said, as a final point, it's all real time. It shows me the latest information. As I can see, my purchase order is now showing up on there. I'll be able to track that through the system itself. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. I'll now pass back to Sam.
Thank you very much, Imad. Now on to the really fun part. So I'm excited to tell you about an incredible event for anyone in the spirits industry, the Spirits Leaders Event 2025. So with the recent changes to alcohol duty, it's more important than ever for distilleries to be running at peak efficiency and maximising profitability. So that's exactly what this event's all about. Joining us in the beautiful Scotland on the 4th and the 5th of June for 2 days packed with invaluable insights, networking, and some truly unique experiences. So day one is all about connection and a little friendly competition. So we'll be hitting the greens at the renowned Dalmahoy Golf Club. Imagine networking with your industry peers whilst enjoying a round of golf on the sunny course. It's a perfect way to build relationships and relax before the main event. So then day two takes us to the heart of Edinburgh at the iconic Scottish whisky experience. Get ready for an inspiring lineup of speakers, including the legendary Eddie the Eagle. Yep, you heard it. He'll be sharing insights on resilience and achieving your goals. We also have some distillery success stories from industry leaders like Oliver Ward, Cooper King, and they'll be sharing their secrets to success. So we'll be showcasing some really cool cutting edge technology like Siligo. This is your chance to navigate the changing landscape and optimize your distillery and to connect with the key players in the spirits industry. So on the screen, you can see a QR code. If you can scan the QR code, if you have time, or alternatively send me an email and I can send you the registration link. If you do not have my details, you can see them on the screen right now. So we would like to open up any questions that you might have.
Hey, thanks Sam and Imad for that. Hi everyone, I'm Rob Scambler, Sales Director at Catalyst ERP, and we've got Stephen, our Director of PS as well. We've got a few questions to get through, so I'll fire them out to Stephen, and hopefully Stephen will be able to answer them. So first one, does the duty get absorbed into the full bottle cost so that the COGS shows the full cost, including the duty charges? Stephen?
Sorry, the costs of the duty doesn't get rolled back into the BOM because the duty is only calculated at the point at which it's actually due, i.e. when you're shipping it or moving it to a duty paid location. So although the cost doesn't get rolled back into the BOM, we are actually tracking the profitability, including pre and post duty on the sales transactions. So we're calculating it a different way, but it doesn't go into the cost, but we're tracking it separately. I hope that makes sense and clears that one up.
Thanks, Stephen. Next one. So for lot numbered assemblies, does the cost get tracked per assembly, FIFO, so that when it is consumed in a BOM or sold, it is the lot cost being sent to COGS?
Yes, yeah. So we would recommend that that FIFO is used, just because NetSuite handles the lot cost tracking very, very well. So you're passing the actual true cost of that individual batch across, and that's also taken into consideration if multiple batches get put into a cask or a vat, for example, as well. So yes.
Third one, a couple more to get through. BOMs are useful for products that are repeated, but how does this handle one-offs? So can we create a batch of bottles without a bill of material?
You can do a one-off work order if you wanted to, where you manually would add the bill of each individual bomb component to the work order, and then when you consume it, when you build it, it will just consume those components. It won't then go off and create a separate bomb that can be reused, but for one-offs, it handles it really well.
Okay. We want to get through. Does the GRNI report in Bottle ERP deal correctly with PO receipts and price differences, in that the GRNI is cleared and any PO or invoice variances posted to the various accounts?
Yeah, so again, all automatically handled by NetSuite's three-way matching. So it will track any variances between quantity, between amounts, and also exchange rates. And you can have auto approval for finance usage based on tolerances on there. And then if there's anything that exceeds over and above those, you can handle them as exceptions manually. So yeah, all taken care of as part of the core system functionality.
Perfect. So we just had a couple more come through. Thanks, guys. Can you track your distribution and storage costs?
Yeah, so you could, those would be handled on NetSuite as, say, vendor bills for the distribution and storage costs. And if you needed to then retrospectively allocate those to the cost of a batch of goods, for example, you could do that using NetSuite's landed cost feature. So you can actually take, for example, a storage cost bill that you'd get from a vendor, link that to an item receipt or a specific batch of goods, and then the cost of that would then ripple through into the actual cost of the items, and that can be done based on quantity, weight, or value.
I hope that answers your question. And then the final one, bit of a long one here. So the MRP in Bottle ERP will input sales orders, sales forecast, etc. Then examine bombs, stocks, open POs, open work orders, and inventory information. Then explode out the bombs into their own PO and work order requirements at the correct dates, taking into account lead times and purchase lot sizes. The end result is a suggestion for X POs, X work orders required at multiple dates, which we can accept or reject or amend. I think that's more of a confirmation of what we've been shown, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way that that's worded is pretty much spot on, and the way that NetSuite handles it. So that workbench screen that that Imad was showing you there, that takes that, it does full ripple through of all the bill of materials in all the individual bombs. And even if there's multiple level bombs as well, there it'll ripple through all those bill of materials and any linked sub-assemblies on there. Taking into consideration all the lead times, any minimum order quantities, etc., and it's going to put those suggestions in place for you. Once you release those suggestions, you've then got your mass create work orders screen and your mass create work orders screen, where it's showing you all the suggestions, and from there you can choose to create the purchase orders and work orders, make any amendments to them, or just ultimately reject them as well if need be. So yeah, I mean, the way it was worded is pretty much spot on, to be fair.
Fantastic. Let's double check there's no more. Mike, I think we've covered all the questions there. So thanks everyone for them. It's really appreciated. I hope you enjoyed the webinar, found it really useful. Obviously, we've only touched on a very, very small aspect of the system. We will be hosting another webinar in 3 or 4 weeks' time. I'm not sure on the topic yet, but Imad and Sam will suggest that and be in touch. Like Sam said, we have the event in June, which will be a fantastic event with Eddie the Eagle, Oliver Ward, Cooper King, and various other people speaking. It's an event not to be missed. So we hope to see you there, and I hope to speak to you all at some point. Sam will be in touch. He is flying off to New York directly after this webinar. He's back next week, so he will be in touch with you all next week. But if you've got any questions, please send them over, and we look forward to connecting with you all very soon. Have a great rest of the day.